So when we think about raising healthy, happy, and vibrant adults, so much of what I remember are the adults in my life. Having somebody who loved me unconditionally, somebody who recognized me for who I was, someone that I could be myself with, that I was absolutely and totally unique in front of this person. So, as we begin to examine this approach of positive youth development, we first need to examine the people in our lives. Who are the adults? Who are the ones that cheered us on, that unconditionally encouraged us to be all that we could be, to bring out our unique talents, and to pursue our passion, otherwise known by the Search Institute as Sparks? So I'm going to tell you a story about somebody in my life, somebody who influenced me, who supported me, and unconditionally cheered me on to become who I am today. My grandmother and I were very close. After all, I was named after her. Her name was Margaret Jane. My name is Margaret Wynne. Now, she was a very, very interesting woman, for you see, she was born in another country. So she had an unusual name. She was my nine. Now, not like the number 9, but it was the Welsh word for grandmother, nine, N-A-I-N. She grew up in the country of Wales. But when she was 19, she decided that she wanted to move to the United States, to be with her brothers, and to have opportunities that she probably would not have as a young woman growing up in rural Wales. So her sister and her got on a boat with a platter underneath their arm and sailed across the Atlantic Ocean into Ellis Island to meet her brothers and to have a better life. For you see, that country was suffering back then. So she wanted to see if she could have a better life for herself. She got her first job in New York City, and she met my grandfather, and she had my father. Now, she had a very, very thick Welsh accent. And you know, she used to speak like this all the time, and she called me Cariad and Cws Bach. Well, when my grandfather died, she moved to New Jersey and lived in the town next door to me. So on weekends, I got to go visit. Not my older sister or my younger brother. They had other weekends to themselves. I got to go by myself. Remember my mother dropping me off on the curb, and I would run upstairs into her apartment. And the first thing I would do would be to run into the kitchen. For you see, Billy the parakeet was in the kitchen. And if he wasn't in his cage, I was not going in. She promised me that she would leave him in the cage because one time he got out into my hair, and I never wanted to experience that again. So I ran into the kitchen to see if he was in his cage. And there he was, safely locked away. Well, the next thing I would do was run into the bedroom and go through all of her costume jewelry. She had pop beads, she had earrings, she had beautiful rings and necklaces. I would put them all over myself and then run into the living room. I looked like a Christmas tree. But my grandmother would laugh and tell me how beautiful I looked. But my favorite game with my nine was playing shoe store. You see, she'd be a very grumpy customer, and she had needed just the right pair of shoes, because she had a bunion on her toe, and she didn't want the bunion to show. So I would run into her bedroom again, go through all of her shoes. I don't know how she knew it, but it was always the last pair of shoes that I brought out that would be just the right pair. Well, I would crawl into her lap and rest myself against that soft chest. I still remember the smell of witch hazel on her cheeks. And she told me stories about her home country, the rolling hills in the Snowdonia forest, and the sheep grazing in the pastures. I loved my grandmother's stories. But as I grew older, I went to college and moved away from home. I grew away from my grandmother. I wasn't there when she died, but I remembered her stories. So when I was a young woman, I decided I would recreate that trip. Now, I didn't carry a plate under my arm, but I had a backpack on my back. I contacted some relatives and flew over to Wales. And my relatives knew where my grandmother lived. So we went down this winding dirt road to an old stone farmhouse. And the people who lived there had invited us to come in. So as I got up onto the porch and reached for that doorknob that she must have touched 100 times in her youth, I swear I heard her voice in my ear. I heard her say, "Oh, Margaret Wynne, I am so glad you've come to see my home." And in that moment, I knew that in life or in death, she would never, ever leave.